All right, everybody, welcome. This is more or less a kickoff meeting for a project that we're trying to start in the Apache Cassandra project to bring together all the different groups that are working on a Cassandra operator, if we can. And this is it's simply just at this point exploratory, and we're just going to ask some questions and have a quick discussion. I mean, this is a quick meeting. It's only 30 minutes, but you know, it's really just to get your impressions and what maybe put some things out there that we would like to talk about. We had a meeting earlier in your day, later yesterday. It was a meeting for the Asia and West Coast United States. We're trying to do this in a way that it's friendly for multiple time zones. You know, this is hard when we have 24 in the world to deal with, but this is how it works. And so the previous meeting was well attended as well. And I don't want to just say, oh, and all the decisions were made. I think that it was a good discussion. There wasn't anything too groundbreaking there, but there's a couple of things that I'd like to know. And first of all, just who all is interested. And I think we have a good showing here. But the next thing is, like, I'd like to discuss is, you know, how we want to participate. I think from the project standpoint, the way to move forward with something like this is with the Cassandra enhancement process. Is everyone familiar with that? Well,
No.
yeah, it's pretty new. The Cassandra enhancement process is something that was brought up was brought forward by the project management committee, the PMC, and the idea is, so instead of just creating a JIRA about a large new feature or something something that's going to change the project. Let's say we want to introduce a new storage engine. Well, instead of just writing the code and dropping the JIRA, there is a process now that we can go through called a Cassandra enhancement process, and other projects do this as well. But it's outlining what the changes would be. It's basically the documentation of what that is before we actually do anything. And the idea is to get as much input as possible, get some sort of an agreement, and then let people go, and let the code be written. The reason you haven't heard of it probably because there's only one out there right now, and it's for the sidecar project. But what I've heard is, you know, this is probably a good place to run a Cassandra enhancement process proposal. So that's something that we'll want to do, which means that it would be on it's on the Cassandra wiki. I think all of you know where it is because you found the link for this meeting. You found the Zoom link. So where the Zoom link lived, that's where the CEPs live as well. So questions about that, and if we do a CEP, does that make it sound less exciting, or would you like to participate? And I'll just leave it open for anyone who wants to comment.
I think either way it would work, at least for us. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Pedro, I know that you guys would probably want to have a lot of input in how it works. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be the most interesting and important part of this, is people who will be affected by the end result. Any group that's going to have to work with it should have a lot of input right now.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. So I was going to start the process with Ben Bromhead from InstaCluster, but it would be great if we had a third person that would like to get involved. preferably someone who's currently working with an operator. Anybody be interested?
We can get someone from Pythian to help out probably.
All right. A lot of the communication is going to happen on the dev list on Cassandra.apache.org. So just to FYI. All right. Let me just walk around here. Like, I'm gonna call out some folks. Anyone from Orange? What would be some of your goals with a project like this, for right now? Because I know you already have an operator, and you're already doing a lot with it. But what would be your goal for a project like this?
Our goal is to go to production, definitely, and that's planned for us for July or August. So that means we have quite some requirements that we have implemented in Cascop already. So when you ask, I don't really want to take the lead for your document, but I could help, obviously, to fit. But for example, we have multi-data center support, which is essential for us, and things like this. So our goal is, it can't be else than production for us at this stage.
This was a question I heard last night, but I think it's a really good one. What makes a Cassandra operator ready for production?
For us, it is when our operational team is happy with it and handles that cluster day to day with the operator. And that's where the problems really come from, because it's quite easy to spawn a cluster, a couple, but then if you want to basically do the operational task on it, then it needs not to be us that do it, but the operational team, because for us they are used to have their Cassandra cluster on bare metal. So to go into Kubernetes is quite a step for them. So it's difficult, but they don't have SSH access to the machines. So it's more difficult to do all the daily tasks are different. So we had to tell them how to do simple things, but differently. For example, using customize instead of having SSH access. So we're quite happy of the sidecar that you delivered, that had been delivered, because I think it's going to help us with the ops team to do their daily tasks. So, for example, we spend quite a lot of time with them to make them work on Kubernetes with the operator. So that's when they say, okay, for us it's ready. And in terms of features, in terms of features, what we lack currently in our Cascop is basically the backup and restore. That's the main thing that we are looking at. So we're looking at Kane right now, but now we are looking at Insta cluster solution, because thanks to Stefan, who came to us and explained what their solution is doing. So we say, oh, that's quite a fit for what we need. So that's the main need we have today.
Okay. I agree with Frank. Like it is quite easy to do operator, and you just spin up a cluster and you are ready to go. But it becomes a little bit harder to do some maintenance on it. Everything is rainbow sunshine if everything just works. But if something starts to fail, then you have to do some workarounds, and you have to hack it manually by editing stateful sets and Kubernetes internals. So it is quite hard to support all operations possible. It is quite a challenge. And from the architecture point of view, maybe this is too soon to get technical, but I think it should be built on operator SDK, on some production like libraries. So we shouldn't invent a wheel here, right? So we should just take what is available and use it to the maximum.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a really good point. It's not creating clusters, it's running them every day. Yeah.
Yeah, because you realize that these things are quite fragile. That's the right word for it. It works, but sometimes it's a little bit scary to do something against it because you just don't know the outcome. And it's
Mm-hmm.
it is also quite hard to test it, because in a lot of cases you just test it as you use it, and it's not the best thing to do, obviously, to test it in production. So another big concern when we are going to have operator like this is to how we can be sure that what we built is actually solid and it is bug free. So maybe some testing framework around it. I think somebody mentioned from DataStax that they did some D-tests or something like that. So maybe that would be the nice piece of code to integrate. Like, we should somehow test what we did.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, is how we test it. Yeah, it's been a problem with the Cassandra project. And I'll point out, we quietly last night, DataStax released our distributed testing suite called Fallout. It's a chaos testing tool mostly. But it's I think this is one of those things that would be helpful in testing something like a Cassandra operator or anything running in Kubernetes, because it does things like does bad things like wipe out nodes, that sort of thing. And that daily operation, like you said, that's the hard part, right? And we will want to test to make sure that people aren't, the people that use it aren't having to, as Frank said, calling the developer team and saying, how does this thing work?
Yeah,
Operators need to be able to use it.
That's what we have every day today. I mean, we are in the same building at the same level, and the ops team just runs down the corridor and say, "Whoops, how do I do that? Oh, you do this." And Alexandre here, that is with us, he normally goes and sort all the problem. So it's still quite a step. That's another thing I wanted to say. That's why we did the plugin on our operator. The plugin enables the operator to type their little beloved command. They love to type commands, so you can say kubectl cascop and do something to the cluster. So they're quite happy with the plugin that enables them to communicate with the cluster without to have to resort all the time to YAML files. And it's quite interesting. It's quite good, and we want to update it with more options. But right now, that's one of the things that actually Cyril did, which he is there.
Yeah. So as I say, it is that like, one thing is what we want, and like features and capabilities and so on. But the other thing is how we are going to implement it. And there are already some operators like Instaclusters, Oranges, or DataStax ones, and like everybody is pretty much opinionated how they did things. So how are we going actually to put all these bits and pieces together so everybody is satisfied, right? Like, I don't know how to put these things together from the implementation point of view. Like, what technical path we will choose when we want to implement it.
That's a great question, and I think that's probably one of my top concerns as well. Is like anything that has to do with operations. My background in operations is pretty deep, and there's no such thing as off-the-shelf ops. Everyone has something different. You can't expect everyone to be running an Amazon, for instance. That's just not the case. Somebody's going to have an old EMC array that needs a special command to run or something like that. And it'll just be a one-off. But I think that is something we can address. And, there are ways to do that with a common project. I think there's a really strong feeling or a strong desire to create more pluggability in the tooling we create, so that the basic part is the same, but then there's different implementations that can get plugged into it. I think you saw that already with Cassandra with the pluggable storage. That's where Instagram went with storage, and that might be a really good idea for the project, for instance, because you may want a different kind of storage engine for your use case. That's an extreme example, but it's just off the top of my head. I don't know if there's any other way to help satisfy a lot of the different requirements out there.
Let me add one thing that we did for Cascop, which is the Orange is operator. We try to make everything that the operational teams needed configurable. So Frank talked about the sidecars that you can add. They can use sidecar to parse logs, to analyze things on each node and triggers some alert somewhere. We did the same for the liveness, readiness, configuration, timeouts. We did the same for the bootstrap, with the bootstrap image to let them choose what they want to use as a bootstrap. The bootstrap image is the first image that is used in order to generate the configuration files, but it could be used to initialize something or to do whatever they need. So we try to add different pieces to Cascop in order for the operational team to configure, to set things up. We have storage classes that they can use, things like that, for them to be able to configure it and at the same time keep it usable by other teams than just Orange. And yeah, I think that's the way to go, to just avoid having things just set up for, like you said, for one purpose, for one cloud provider.
Yeah, that's true. Another thing I've heard is, are there things that need to be done on the Kubernetes side? Changes at Kubernetes, or do we need to? Because this is something I think is on the table. Is Kubernetes may need some changes as well. Are there things? Does anyone have an opinion on this? Are there parts of Kubernetes that need to be modified, or there needs to be new things added to Kubernetes to make this easier for Cassandra to operate?
I'm not sure if it's Kubernetes or Cassandra, but it's about the IPs. I mean, for what we experience is that Cassandra, and I'm not an expert in Cassandra, so I may say stupid things, so don't hesitate to correct me. We're quite sensitive to the IP that the node gets. For example, if you put two Cassandra nodes on the same Kubernetes node, when they do an upgrade of the node, it restarts and you may switch the IPs, and then Cassandra doesn't really like it too much. So I don't know if it's on Cassandra or in Kubernetes that something needs to be done, but we had a problem with that. We sorted it in one way, which is, acceptable, I suppose, for us. But well, about the sensitivity to IP is something that needs to be looked at in a way or another.
This is something we raised during our first, when we presented Cascop to your team, Patrick, last time. And we talked about it, if there was a way to use names instead of IPs. If we were using names, even if the IP changes, it would just, not complain. Because if the IP changes, but the IP is not used by another node, Cassandra just, sees the change and applies it to the host mapping, or I don't remember the internal table that it uses, but it just applies it and everybody sees the new IP of the node and there is no issue. But if the IP is already in the list and has tokens, then it's an issue. And that's why we have the cross IP problem that we had to resolve on our side. So this is something we raised in the past being able to use something else than IPs, just name, something. And this is not available yet, I think. And I don't know if something was done or if there is work being done.
Yeah, I was just
to use
talking to
everything.
Chris Bradford about this the other day. Bradford, did you end up filing a ticket in Cassandra for that?
No, it's coming. What Splinter's talking about is a ticket to potentially use host names instead of direct IP addresses. And that
Which
would
has
be
never been okay in Cassandra land. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. No, the first thing to go is DNS, right?
Yeah.
But in this Kubernetes world, using something like host names, you can do some very interesting things when it comes to network tricks, such as in one cluster, you could point traffic to the ingress on another cluster. So when we start talking about multi-region, it could be very useful to change the IP address depending on the cluster that you're in to support advanced routing. But right now, I've talked about this a little bit. Right now, the internals of Cassandra are all IPs and ports all the way. So that's a ticket that will probably be filed this week.
Is there anything on the, I guess that's all Cassandra. The reason I'm asking about the Kubernetes changes is that, I've talked to folks in the Kubernetes community, and they're there's a lot of interest in Cassandra being a part of Kubernetes, the ecosystem, because it's just the way that it works. We all know that, right? I'm not convincing anybody on this call, but there's just an acknowledgement that, that the way that Kubernetes operates is very biased towards, the stateless applications. And when we start in, how many people run a database on Kubernetes? Not a lot. So, this is a maturation. A mature part of Kubernetes is some changes that need to happen to make it work better. So I think there's willingness on both sides. There's a lot of people who want to see this happen. So we can engage Kubernetes people on this as well.
I think you're right. We never thought about it because we were just working with Kubernetes abilities, features, and we were just doing,
trying to make it work.
We didn't even think about talking to them because the time is an issue also. So we have a deadline. They have a deadline to go to production. So we didn't even think about it because, I don't know how much time it would take. But yeah, the issues that we had were the question we had were how to make it fit in Kubernetes. So we use different stateful sets in order to represent different rack in order to be able to just, do some rolling restart, because we wanted to be able, for example, to apply something to two racks and to trigger a rolling restart of two racks in parallel. This is not something that we can do today, but this is something we had in mind. So we have like a weird, we just use a bunch of stateful sets to represent the racks that we have. And if there was another way, a simpler way, I think that would be great.
Yeah.
So the rack awareness, a way to represent the rack awareness of Cassandra would be good.
If we come back to the operators we talked about, one of the big problems was debugging in Kubernetes at scale, because when you start to have big traffic, and they struggle to do debugging on the nodes. But we saw that in 1.19 was kubectl debug that's coming. So we actually hope that this can help a lot with the ephemeral containers. So that would have been my biggest worry today, is how to make people debug on Kubernetes. But it looks like they know, and it's coming.
Yeah, there's the SIG observability at CNCF. Again, it would be really good to work with them around, I think they may not be thinking about a distributed database. And we all know that it's not just looking at the system log. There's a lot of interaction issues that happen, and sometimes it's impossible to figure out where the problem is. But that's a big part of Kubernetes is observability. You need to be able to troubleshoot network-wide distributed problems. Prometheus and tools like that are built around what happened cluster-wide, not just on a single node. Right. I didn't know about the kubectl debug, huh? I have to look into that. All right. We're running up against time here. I just, are there any questions project-wise or things to raise up? Of course, after we're done here, I'm recording right now. I will post the videos for everyone else to see that couldn't show up, didn't want to show up. I'm also taking notes. I'll rewatch the videos and beef up the notes and stuff. So just so that we have, and put those on the Cassandra Wiki, just so that everybody has a chance to look at it. We'll find a way for people to comment, but the next step really is to do this Cassandra enhancement process. Ben and I will, we will create the scaffolding for it, and then everyone here, your job is to go comment and make your points, because everyone's making great points. Go make your points, and let's see what we can do to make this look. I mean, this is going to be a group effort. What do we need to look like if it's closer to Cassandra? Another thing that Nate McCall asked me is, can we just do these every week? Is everyone okay with that, or is that too fast? Or would you be open to it?
Maybe bi-weekly.
That might be easier. Just in the interest of keeping the conversation going, I think if we have a document that we're all working from, these kind of conversations can be, I don't know, working off the dev list can be pretty slow sometimes. And if we may have a topic. So the way I could see these working is we could take the CEP, that will be the agenda list. We may just pick a topic and have everyone show up and dig into it. Like, how do we deal with DNS? And we'll float all the ideas. Or what's the deal with stateful sets? All right, any more questions, things that you hoped were brought up?
Hello there.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
I was just thinking there is a ticket for sticky IPs on Kubernetes, which is related to the DNS issue. I can link it in the chat for anyone to read.
Yes, that would be great. I'll put that in the notes. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Cool.
Sticky IPs. Here we go. So much for dynamic. That makes sense, though. I'm sure, yeah, this isn't just a small problem. Great. Anyone else?
It's worth noting that ticket is going on 4 years old. So there's definitely a desire.
Oh, yeah. This is an old ticket.
Yeah, we probably asked questions on that one before. Yeah.
Wow, this is a long ticket. This rivals some of the scariest tickets in the Cassandra project. Lots of opinions here. Oh, well, I'll get another cup of coffee and read through it. This is interesting. Oh, don't we all love open source? It's great. All right, well, any last things? I'm just keeping everyone's time. I know I'm probably keeping you away from, oh, you're not going anywhere, are you? I was going to say, you're probably going to go out and have a beer, but no, you're not. Sorry.
Do you think everybody is restricted to their home here? Nobody's free?
Is anybody free? Tell us what it's like when you leave your house.
I can send you some pictures, Patrick.
Is Portugal not locked down?
It is, but I'm in the middle of nowhere in Portugal. So there's no one around, so I can move a little bit. So.
That's not, you're still socially distant, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Nothing but goats and cows.
Exactly. Yeah, but at least I can walk a little bit, so
That's
nice.
great. That's the thing that we all we have the ability to do this anywhere,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so it's pretty good. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for participating today. Just watch the dev list. That's where I'm going to try to do most of the communication. I'm going to communicate the status of like what we did here, just so that it's all out in the open. I really am happy to see the amount of interest we have here, and cautiously hopeful that we can actually pull this off. You know, this is going to be, there's a lot of different opinions out there, but we can make this work, right? All right. Well, thanks everyone, and
Thank
stay
you.
safe. All right.